Picture this. It's the 4th of September 1781, the Los Angeles basin. The heat here isn't an oppressive, humid blanket like it is in Philadelphia. It is a scorching, bone-dry furnace, a shimmering, translucent haze that smells of parched sagebrush, sun-baked earth, and the faint, sulfurous tang of asphaltum seeping from the ground. Beside a modest, silt-heavy stream they call the Porciuncula River, 44 people are standing at the absolute edge of their endurance. Their clothes are caked in the gritty dust of a brutal, 1,000-mile trek from northern Mexico. They aren't wealthy aristocrats, enlightened philosophers, or men in powdered wigs. They are a motley crew of pobladoras farmers, laborers, and soldiers of Spanish, African, and Native American descent. They have come to what feels like the end of the world to plant a seed in the desert. If they fail, they won't just lose their investment, they will be swallowed by the wilderness, forgotten by an empire that already considers them a footnote. But here's the thing. We think we know Los Angeles. We know the swaying palm trees, the neon-lit red carpets, and the endless smog-choked freeways. We've seen the Hollywood sign and the glittering glass towers of downtown. But what about the silence before the sirens? What did the air actually taste like on a Tuesday afternoon when there were more grizzly bears in the hills than people? What did the rhythmic, heavy thud of a wooden hoe sound like against the cracked, thirsty soil of a land that hadn't seen rain in months? What kind of place was desolate enough, isolated enough, and yet hauntingly promising enough to birth a global titan from a cluster of mud brick huts? Most history books give you a flat map and a dry list of Spanish missions. They give you a sanitized, postcard version of the past. We're doing something different. By cross-referencing colonial census records, Spanish military logs, and vivid first-hand accounts through advanced AI modeling, we have digitally resurrected the living, breathing Los Angeles of 1781. This isn't a tourist stop at Olvera Street where you buy a souvenir. This is a sensory journey into the most remote, multi-ethnic, and unlikely outpost in the Spanish Empire. A village of 44 souls, all living on the razor's edge of a desert. We aren't going to the movie studios yet. First, we're going into the dust of the original plaza. Let's step back 250 years. If the grid provided the rigid bones of colonial Philadelphia, the Los Angeles basin in its natural state was a pulsing, rhythmic landscape of a different kind of order. Before the Spanish arrived with their Bibles and bayonets, this was Tova Angar, the world of the Tongva people. To walk through this basin 2,000 years ago wasn't to walk through a wasteland. It was to navigate a sophisticated, interlocking network of nearly 100 villages, each a masterpiece of ecological balance. As you stand where downtown LA skyscrapers now pierce the clouds, the first thing you notice is the sound. It's the rhythmic, percussive thud-thud-thud of stone pestles against granite mortars as women grind acorns into fine meal, the staple fuel of a civilization. The air here doesn't smell of smog or exhaust. It carries the heavy, honeyed scent of sagebrush and the salty, crisp tang of the Pacific breeze blowing inland. But there is another smell, too, a thick, earthy, chemical odor. It's the scent of asphaltum, or raw tar, bubbling up from the earth at the Brea pits. For the Tongva, this wasn't pollution, it was a gift. It was the glue that held their world together. You see men down at the shore, their bodies glistening with sweat and sea spray, using that very tar to seal the seams of their Tamil's extraordinary wooden plank canoes capable of crossing the treacherous channel to the islands. They were the masters of the water long before any European hull touched these sands. They lived in Kihik elegant, domed homes made of willow branches and tule reeds that breathed with the wind. This was a world where trade routes stretched like a nervous system, from the coast to the deep desert, swapping seashells for obsidian and fur. It was a civilization built on the song and dance of the Creator, Kwauar. But as you watch the smoke rise from the village of Yang Na, a shadow is beginning to stretch across the mountains. A sophisticated world that had thrived for 10,000 years was about to collide with a force that didn't just want to trade, it wanted to civilize and save. What happens when a culture rooted in the rhythm of the seasons meets an empire obsessed with the permanence of stone and the dictates of the clock? Step into the center of the world, or at least what the Spanish crown intended to be the center of this new world. By the late 1700s, the dusty cluster of huts has begun to take a shape that would look familiar to any subject of the empire, from Madrid to Manila. This is the plaza, the sacred heart of the Pueblo de Los Angeles. If the Tongva world was a fluid map of seasons and spirits, the Spanish world is one of rigid, unyielding geometry. As you walk across the open, sun-baked square, the first thing that hits you is the heat radiating off the earth, but it's mixed with a new, industrial smell, the heavy, damp scent of adobe. Thousands of bricks, made of clay, water, and straw, are baking in the sun. This is the literal DNA of early Los Angeles. You see men with mud-stained hands stacking these heavy blocks into thick walls designed to keep out the desert heat and the perceived dangers of the pagan wilderness beyond. The layout isn't an accident. It is dictated by the laws of the Indies, a massive set of royal regulations that prescribed exactly how a colonial town must look. The plaza must be a rectangle. The corners must face the 4 cardinal winds. The church must be the tallest structure, a sentinel of God overlooking the marketplace. There is a staggering sense of preordained order here. You hear the rhythmic, metallic clink-clink of a blacksmith's hammer and the low, melodic chanting coming from the small chapel, a precursor to the great La Iglesia de Nuestra Señora la Reina de los Ángeles. But look at the streets branching off the square. They aren't the broad, paved avenues of Penn's Philadelphia. They are narrow, dusty lanes that end abruptly where the irrigation ditches the zanjas begin. The city feels like a fortress of civilization, carved out of a land that is still very much wild. The Spanish brought their bricks, their crosses, and their compasses to impose order on the void. But as the evening shadows stretch across the adobe walls, you begin to realize that this order was a fragile mask. Beneath the prayers and the geometry, a much deeper transformation was happening, one that took place not in the plaza, but in the sprawling mission fields just over the horizon. If the plaza was the brain of the new Pueblo, the San Gabriel mission was its heavy, thumping heart. Just 9 miles to the east, the Queen of the Missions loomed over the landscape, a massive fortress of faith that transformed the basin more profoundly than any army could. To understand the early friction of Los Angeles, you have to stand in the shadow of its stone walls. As you approach San Gabriel in the 1780s, the first thing you notice is the sound, the constant, commanding tolling of the bronze bells. There are no watches here. The bells are the clock. They tell you when to wake, when to pray, when to eat, and when the workday in the fields begins. The air is thick with a strange, conflicting bouquet. The sweet, floral scent of the first orange blossoms and the heavy, sickly sweet smell of boiling tallow as hundreds of pounds of cow fat are rendered into soap and candles. Look at the workers in the vineyards and the cattle pens. These are the neophytes, the Tongva people, now renamed Gabrieleños by the friars. Their lives have been radically reordered. They are no longer navigating the tides in tommels or gathering acorns. They are nudging millions of adobe bricks and tending to the vast herds of Spanish cattle that are slowly grazing the native grasslands into extinction. But beneath the Latin hymns and the order of the courtyard, a volatile energy is building. In 1785, a 24-year-old Tongva shaman named Toypurina did the unthinkable. She didn't just pray for the Spanish to leave, she organized a multi-village revolt to destroy the mission. She wasn't fighting for land in the European sense, she was fighting to reclaim the soul of her people. The rebellion failed, and she was exiled. But the silence that followed was not one of peace. It was the heavy, loaded silence of a world being crushed under the weight of a new god. The missions were an economic miracle and a human tragedy, a civilizing experiment that built the foundation of L.A. on the literal bones of its original inhabitants. But as the power of the Spanish crown began to fade and the missions were broken apart, a new, even more extravagant era was about to take hold. What happens to a land of faith when it is suddenly turned into a land of massive, private fortunes? Imagine the transition. The cross and the prayer book are being replaced by the lasso and the branding iron. By the 1830s, Mexico has won its independence from Spain, and the once mighty missions are being dismantled. The land, millions of acres of it, is being sliced up like a massive cake and handed out to well-connected families. This is the era of the ranchos, the golden age of the Californios. As you ride through the basin now, the silence of the Tongva era and the rigid order of the Spanish plaza have been replaced by a deafening, earth-shaking rumble. It's the sound of tens of thousands of longhorn cattle moving across the parched plains. The air is no longer just dusty. It is thick with the scent of sun-baked manure and the rich, mouth-watering aroma of beef roasting over open pits, the legendary asado. In this world, cattle aren't just food. They are the literal currency. You see merchant ships from New England and Europe anchored off the coast at San Pedro, waiting to trade manufactured goods, silk, mirrors, and steel for what they call California banknotes. These aren't paper bills. They are thick, stiff, salt-cured cattle hides and heavy bladders of tallow. It is a high-stakes, visceral economy of skin and fat. Inside the cool, thick-walled adobe mansions of families like the Picos or the Lugos, life is a whirlwind of hospitality. You hear the frantic, rhythmic strumming of guitars and the rhythmic stomping of boots in a week-long fandango. These are the lords of the land, ruling over estates like Rancho San Pedro or Rancho Los Nietos, estates so vast that a man could ride for a full day and never leave his own property. But look closely at the boundary markers they use to define these empires. They aren't using surveyors' transits or precise maps. They are pointing to a prominent pile of rocks or a lone, twisted oak tree as the corner of their kingdom. It is a system built on honor and a handshake. But as the 1840s approach, a new power is marching from the east, one that doesn't care about honor, only about what is written on paper in a language the Californios cannot yet read. What happens to a dream built on natural landmarks when it meets the cold, hard logic of a courtroom? As the flags change from the eagle and snake of Mexico to the stars and stripes of the United States in 1848, the very atmosphere of the Los Angeles basin shifts. It isn't just the climate, it's the weight of a new language and a new clinical kind of power. The dusty, boisterous era of the fandango is being silenced by the soft, rhythmic scratching of metal nibs on parchment. Enter a courtroom in the early 1850s. The air here doesn't smell of roasting beef or sage. It smells of stale tobacco, damp wool, and the ink-heavy scent of bureaucracy. This is the stage for the California Land Act of 1851. To the Californio rancheros, land was a living thing, defined by the shade of a willow tree or the curve of a creek. To the new American arrivals, land is a commodity to be measured, gridded, and titled. The tragedy of this era isn't found on a battlefield, but in the silence of these rooms. You see men like Vicente Lugo or the Verdugo family, men who once owned tens of thousands of acres standing before a public land commission, bewildered. They are required to prove their titles in English, a language they don't speak, using surveys they don't possess, in a legal system designed to drain them dry. Even when they win their cases, they lose. The legal fees are so astronomical that families are forced to mortgage their empires to pay the lawyers. You hear the heavy, final thud of a gavel, and just like that, a century of heritage is signed away for pennies on the dollar. The Verdugos lose Rancho San Rafael, The Lugos lose their homes to foreclosure. By the time the dust settles, the Golden Age is a memory, and the vast open ranges are being chopped into small, fenced-off lots for a tidal wave of new settlers from the east. L.A. is now American, but it is still a parched, isolated cattle town on the edge of a desert. The hides are gone, the ranchos are broken, and the sun is still relentless. The city has the land, but it lacks the one thing required to become a titan. In a land where it only rains a few inches a year, how do you sustain 1,000,000 dreams? The answer wouldn't come from the sky, it would come from a man with a transit and a terrifyingly simple vision: water. It's the 5th of November, 1913, the north end of the San Fernando Valley. The sun is doing what it does best in Southern California, beating down on 40,000 people who have traveled by buggy, horseback, and early automobile to witness a secular miracle. They are standing in a natural amphitheater of dust and scrub brush, their eyes fixed on a massive concrete spillway. The air smells of dry sage and the exhaust of 1,000 idling engines, but there is an electric tension in the crowd that has nothing to do with the heat. For years, Los Angeles had been a city suffocating on its own success. It was a boom town without a pulse, a place where the population was growing 10 times faster than the local wells could replenish. The Los Angeles River was little more than a trickle in the sand. Without a new source of life, the City of Angels was destined to remain a ghost town in waiting. Then, you hear it. Before you see the water, you feel the vibration in the soles of your boots. It starts as a low, guttural growl deep within the mountains. Then, a white, frothing wall of mountain water, the silver torrent, bursts from the mouth of the aqueduct. It has traveled 233 miles, pulled by nothing but gravity from the snow-capped peaks of the Sierras, crossing the Mojave Desert through steel siphons and solid granite tunnels. Standing at the center of it all is a man who never went to engineering school, William Mulholland. As the water gurgles and splashes, sending a cool, misty spray into the parched air, he doesn't give a long-winded speech. He simply points to the rushing river and says 5 of the most consequential words in urban history. There it is. Take it. In that moment, the geography of the basin is rewritten forever. L.A. is no longer a desert outpost. It is a laboratory for the impossible. But as the crowd cheers, 200 miles to the north, a valley is dying. The Owens Valley has been bled dry to fill the swimming pools and bathtubs of a city they will never see. L.A. has solved its thirst. But this stolen water is about to fuel a different kind of explosion, one that smells of sweet blossoms and looks like liquid gold hanging from a tree. How did a simple piece of fruit turn this manufactured oasis into the most advertised paradise on Earth? Step into the San Gabriel Valley in 1920. The air is no longer just hot and dry. It is perfumed a thick, intoxicating scent of millions of orange blossoms that drifts for miles. This is the Orange Empire. Thanks to Mulholland's water and the arrival of the refrigerated rail car, the 20th century's version of a magic trick, Los Angeles has become the citrus capital of the world. You see endless, disciplined rows of trees, heavy with golden fruit, stretching toward the purple mountains like a shimmering green sea. But this wasn't just agriculture. It was the birth of modern branding. Organizations like Sunkist didn't just ship fruit. They exported an image. Every crate sent to a frozen town in the Midwest carried a vibrant lithograph of a sun-drenched woman in a lush garden. They were selling health, eternal summer, and the good life to a nation exhausted by winter. L.A. was the first city in history to be manufactured as a luxury product. Tens of thousands of people bought the dream and a one-way train ticket. But as the orchards bloomed, the ground beneath the trees was beginning to leak a different, darker kind of wealth, one that was black, greasy, and far more explosive than any fruit. Would L.A. remain a quiet garden? Or was it about to become the engine of a global machine? By 1923, the intoxicating scent of oranges is being choked out by the heavy, acrid tang of raw crude. You're standing on Signal Hill, where oil derricks are packed so tightly they look like a jagged wooden forest. This is the Black Gold Rush, an explosion of wealth that has transformed Los Angeles into the top oil producer on the planet. The air is greasy, smelling of cold metal and ancient, pressurized energy. But a few miles west, a different kind of alchemy is occurring. Under the blinding electric arcs of a studio backlot, reality is being traded for celluloid. This is the rise of Hollywood's dream factory. While Edward Doheny wells pump the lifeblood of the industrial age, the movie moguls are pumping out the myths that will define the century. L.A. now possesses a split personality, one foot in the grimy mud of the oil fields, the other in the shimmering shadows of a soundstage. Is this a city of substance, or just a beautiful projection against the desert sky? As the sun finally dips below the Pacific horizon, casting a bruised purple glow over the Santa Monica Mountains, the focus of Los Angeles shifts from the vertical dreams of Hollywood to the horizontal reality of the freeway. You're standing on an overpass above the 405, watching a river of white and red lights pulse in a rhythmic, mechanical tide. The air no longer smells of orange blossoms or raw crude. It is a metallic electric cocktail of tire rubber, exhaust, and expensive coffee. This is the ultimate evolution of the Los Angeles experiment. In the 1950s and 60s, the city didn't just grow, it exploded outward, fueled by a car culture that demanded speed over community. You can still hear the echoes of the neighborhoods that were sacrificed to build this concrete web communities in East LA, and Bunker Hill that were sliced through by the 10 and the 101, their histories buried under asphalt. You lie in your bed as the hum of the city vibrates through the floorboards. Through the open window, the sound of a distant police helicopter joins the constant, low-frequency roar of the distant highway. 10 o'clock, and all is well, you might want to say. But deep down, you know Los Angeles is a city forever at war with its own geography. It is a desert metropolis that shouldn't exist, a multi-ethnic powerhouse born from a cluster of mud huts, and a global capital built entirely on the fragile pillars of stolen water and projected illusions. Tonight, Los Angeles remains the capital of the future, a beautiful, dangerous, and dazzling contradiction. The mirage must hold, even if the ground beneath it does not. Thanks for joining us in this reconstruction of the City of Angels. If you enjoyed this journey through Chronicles of Time, hit subscribe, and tell us, what city should we digitally resurrect next? History is waiting. See you very soon.